Hello, Neil. Thank you so much for your time today and for being here. I met you a couple of weeks ago now at the Heal Scotland Festival, and I was so surprised and at the same time so excited to hear that you were an economist.
Yeah, lovely to meet you, Maureen. Lovely to be in part of this podcast. Yeah, I'm Neil McInroy. I'm an economist, but I suppose I'm an economist that's went a bit weird, and that I'm interested in how the economy truly works for people and how we create an economy that works for people, because arguably it doesn't. You know, the economy is something we've got to fit into, and it shouldn't be. We should create our own economy and our own image and our own needs, wants, and desires. So that's my interest, and that's the kind of economist I am. I work for an American think tank called the Democracy Collaborative, and they are about building an economy that works for everyone, basically, across the USA and globally. So brilliant to be here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. Thank you. So yeah, the whole thing, I think your talk at the festival was about community wealth building. So first of all, you talked about 3 economies.
It's important, first thing to say is that economy comes from a Greek word oikonomos. I probably said that all wrong, but yeah, oikonomos, which means keeper of the household, which means something. The economy is something that should be close to our hearts, our people, our communities, and we need to build an economy that does that. That's the root of the word economy, and it's what I think all economies should be. And way to think about that is to think, well, there's not just one economy, there's actually 3, and we all have different relationships with them. One is the commercial economy, the private economy, which is the kind of wealth generating economy, privately owned. And that's, many of the goods and services we buy, use are in the private economy, the commercial economy. So that's that. And we work, some of us work in it. And so forth. But then there's also the public economy, which is the sort of shared collective space that we all use, services and goods we use. The National Health Service is part of the public economy. The roads that we walk on is part of the public economy. The drains that we use, the sewage system, sometimes that's public economy. These are things that are owned or distributed by the public sector. And in a sense, who pays for them? Well, we kind of pay for them partly, but we've also got taxation, haven't we? So we pay our taxes, it goes to whatever, Treasury, Scottish Government, and then it comes back in the form of these services. So that's the public economy. Important, And if we didn't have the public economy, housing, roads, problematic. We need the public economy. And in fact, the public economy is worth about probably 35% of the whole economy, all public spending. Big. But then we get the third one, which is the most interesting one, which is people hardly see it as economy at all. But in fact, it's the most important bit of the economy. And it's called the core economy, or in common parlance, it's the social economy.
Right.
Yeah. Now, this is the economy which sometimes money doesn't pass hands. So it's neighborliness. It's looking after children, your own children or elderly relatives. It's all the things we do that's a transaction, not necessarily has any money passing hands in it. And so you might be thinking there, people listening go like, well, that's not really the economy, is it? Well, it is, because it's a good and service being provided. And also, it's called core because if you didn't have that, the commercial economy and the public economy wouldn't work properly. Imagine if we didn't have mums or dads looking after children in their early years. Well, that person, when they came to work in the commercial economy, might not be that socialized and be able to perform anything in the commercial economy. Also, imagine if no one looked after elderly relatives, or no one did any childcare. It would probably have to be the public sector that did it, and that would break the system. How much would that cost? All those things that we do as families and in neighborhoods that would have to be done by a public sector. So it's the core economy. is key. And there's a guy called Edgar Kahn who kind of first started talking about the core economy, Professor Edgar Kahn. And Edgar says the core economy is like the operating system of our society. It's the operating economy of a society. So imagine in our computer metaphor, we've got the Windows 10 or Windows Vista, whatever it is. It's the operating system, isn't it? It's the back office thing by which we then put in Word and PowerPoint and all our programs, yeah? Or it's the Android system in the phone, and then we have all the apps that sit on the actual platform. What Edgar says is the core economy is the operating system. It's the Android or it's the Windows 10. Without that, the apps won't work. We won't have a commercial economy if nobody is in a safe and secure neighborhood. If we've not been brought up in nice families and have that sense of love and care. So, in short, Maureen, there's three economies: public, commercial, and the core economy, and they all need to work well together. And if they don't work well together, you've got economic problems.
Right. I love that. Thank you very much, Neil. And, hearing you the first time around speak about that, I was thinking, so, if you apply that to the film industry, which is a 95% gig industry, so it's freelance, and there's a whole sort of, different lifestyle that comes with freelance and talking back about, childcare and about, caring for elderly relatives and about, just, having family as a basic. It is part, especially in Scotland, where there is a production boom. You want to be able to retain Scottish talent, and there's a shortage of crew at the moment. So, for example, if you think about all the women who had children and are staying at home to look after the kids, I don't know, it just resonated with me in terms of building the wealth that could be the film sector and the film and TV sector in Scotland. It just felt like there was something to think about in terms of integrating that core economy and the private sector and the public, and the balance that they all have together. And it feels like sometimes there is no sort of allowing the core coming into the private sector. And for me, when I thought about it, that sort of was the foundation of the few crises that we've had in the film industry, like the Me Too, where there was no the culture of bullying, and there was no and sexual harassment and all that, and there was nowhere to turn to, the cancel culture, which is another form of bullying. So yeah, it just felt like knowing about the core economy was a first step towards understanding an answer to those sort of crises, basically. People come up with policies in companies about anti-bullying, about grieving policies, like allowing for, it feels like, the core economy to sort of permeate into the private sector. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, the way to think about any industry, including the film industry, they've all got similarities, is that a strong, resilient, innovative, forward-thinking industry needs to think about how it sits within those kind of three dimensions, because they all need to be nurtured to create a buoyant industry. And so you need to have that creativity, innovation, imagination, confidence, both as individuals but also as a community. There has to be that. Where places don't have that, where does the innovation come in the industry? There's not got, because it's about people in the end. All the economy is about people. So one needs to have that nurturing of creativity, innovation, that core, so that you get a burgeoning industry that responds to the needs, wants, and desires of individuals. It has to be socialized, any industry, because a good or service needs to relate to the people that's buying it. So it's key for me in terms of building industry that film or any art is a core part of the upbringing of our children. It's in the DNA of what we are. Creativity and the arts are so important, yeah, as a basis to the film industry, and that needs to be nurtured. And then, of course, you have, investment money and so forth that already comes to Scotland around film.
Exactly.
But it needs to come in and be reflective of and snuggle, let's say, with the prevailing milieu and culture and nature of this place. Just coming in and using the sites and using this, and then it comes and goes. That's extractive. That's not an industry. That's just investment in. Yeah. So there has to be an element of that inward investment, commercial bit of the economy into Scotland for the film industry that snuggles and grows, that's indigenous, this place, yeah, grows our household as a collective nation, if you like. It can't just be fly by night, come in and go away. And then, of course, the public economy has a role to play here in terms of supporting, students, supporting the infrastructure that supports both the growth of the core economy and the growth of investment and how investment lands here. So you need all of those elements thought together to have industrial growth, success. And if you look at some other industries, any industry pick that's been successful, the digital technological revolution, say in South Korea, it has obviously designed from scratch. It nurtured its people to get interested in innovation and technology. It got foreign investment, often American investment initially, investment in had the public sector, the state mobilizing it's to help Samsung and so forth. And what's fascinating about in South Korea, they support the core economy quite significantly. They see it as the innovative force by which they can get new products and new ideas. And they have actually a process in South Korea where individuals get supported by the state to practice ancient crafts, wood crafts, some of those basic creative, long-standing activities. And that is plugged into things like the Samsung phone and so forth in terms of ergonomics, in terms of design. So there is a well thought through approach, if you like, in some countries around the industry development that thinks about the dimensions around these three elements of the economy. But basically nurturing the core is the font of innovation, as the crucible of innovation, as the means by which an economy stays relevant, because it's nurturing the people who actually they are the seeds by which the market stays contemporary and relevant.
Exactly. Wow. I love that example about South Korea. That's so enlightening. Since you were talking about digital revolution, do you have any insight into what's going on with AI at all? Like, how does that play into, is that a debate that's going on in an economist's life at the moment?
Yeah. I mean, I believe that, all technology, everything that humankind invents or creates has so much positive. I believe in the human spirit and our restlessness to advance, and our eyes are in front of our faces. We don't look back and we don't look side. We're always, almost to our own, obviously to our own detriment, always searching, hunting for new things and new ideas. There's an inexorable discontent and restlessness with the human being, and we can't deny it, and we need to revel in it. And so new technology and new innovations is key. Where it goes wrong is where that restlessness, that discontentedness, that hunger is allowed to reside, or the wealth that comes from it, or the success that comes from it, resides in individuals and powerful individuals, or powerful institutions or corporations. That's where the danger is. That's where it becomes the selfish, the greedy, the self-serving. And so all industry and all economy needs to be democratized. We all need to have a stake and share it, share the ownership of the economy. Because if we all have a stake in something, then selfishness falls away, greed falls away. We do things for the common good. So we need to democratize our industries. And the same with AI. Great thing. Let's make sure it's democratized. Let's not a corporation, a single corporation and its shareholders decide how that industry should evolve and develop. Let's not talk to us. The economy is about us. We are the keeper of the household. It's about in our. It should be made in our image, not in their image. So we need to democratize our industries. That's why, we need to have more cooperatives, employee-owned firms. As soon as you put in place a cooperative or employee ownership, then all the workers and the community even can have a genuine stake in that industry and that economic activity. And it's not going to be self-serving. The wealth that's created won't just go back to one or two men or a few shareholders who live in the Cayman Islands. The wealth will come back to all of us. So this is the radical elements to, I suppose, my economics. This is a democratization of the economy. This is a socialization of the economy, or to use an artistic metaphor, Aldous Huxley, the writer, the Brave New World. Yeah. Well, this is about building a new Brave New World in economic terms. It's about opening new doors of perception. His other book, Aldous Huxley. And I think it's LSD. New doors of perception, LSD. Localize, socialize, and democratize our economy. LSD.
I love that. LSD. Where do you see Scotland going in terms of that economy? Do you think we're going, the right way in terms of achieving that thinking? What do you think next?
All nations struggle. All nations need to make the great transition, as I would call it, away from fossil fuels, away from wealth concentration, away from greed, towards everybody's got a stake in the economy, where we live within the limits of the environment, where we don't destroy the biosphere. And there's a massive transition to take place. But of course, our economy, our national economy are intertwined with the global economic, global capitalism, let's call it that. The ebbs and flows of global financial systems. Scotland can't take itself out of the world. It's part of the world. And there's capital flows coming in, there's corporates coming in, there's greed in Scotland. We can't divorce ourselves. So what a nation can only do is start to turn the dial, start to create if you like, in policy terms, to create the tram lines that starts to affect change to how global financial system works when it lands here. And so the Scotland's well-being economy framework is very much about that. It's about saying, look, our economy is building the well-being of the people in Scotland. It's a vision, it's an aspiration. That's good. And then it's got things like community wealth building, which is a means by which we rewire the system internally in Scotland, and have got a programme to do that. So Scotland's up there in trying to forge a different economic pathway for itself. But we are fully owned and fully incorporated within a much more unhealthy global financial and global economic system. And of course, without getting too political, there's only so much one can do when one's not an independent nation. And obviously, even then, you're struggling in terms of the wider economic context and the interconnectedness we have with all of that stuff. So we're not going fast enough. We're not going quick enough. We're not going deep enough. But we're starting a journey, and we're up there with the more progressive nations of the world, at least have tried to do something about the economy and how it doesn't serve the planet or indeed many people.
I wanted to come back to, it might be a detail or it might be, but you were talking about cooperatives.
Yeah.
In Scotland, you also have, and I think in the UK, but community interest companies.
Yeah.
Is that sort of the model that you recommend, as opposed to sort of, a limited company or something that is, that basically you take a salary out of it, like as a shareholder, but all the profit gets redistributed into the company so that you can do, more good and more good. That's the way I see it. Is that a model that, you have any thoughts on?
Yeah, I mean, we never talk enough about, this is central, Maureen, what you're saying there. Basically that ownership and us having a genuine stake, not just as workers, but an ownership stake in our economy, owning assets, economic assets, land, owning property, owning business, either as a collective endeavour, is vital to build a better economy. It's vital for climate crisis. We're never going to make the change if the interests of a few, and often men, and a few distant shareholders who can insulate themselves from the climate crisis are making the decisions about whole swathes of the economy. So we need to grow community interest companies, co-ops, employee-owned firms, mutuals, more public ownership. Surely a water supply, the most common good, should be national, should be owned by all of us in the public economy. Yeah. Or electricity, things that are basic for every single human being require that. Should you care? Should we really be people making profit out of care? Surely all the resources we have for a care service should be utilised for the people who work in that industry, and any surplus that's made reinvested back to providing decent care for everyone as part of the core economy. Of course, it's important that children and older people looked after in their old age. So, yeah, CICs are an important part of the mix, and sadly, across the world, ownership is almost like, I'm going to set up a business, private limited company. It's kind of like the easy thing, and it's easier to do that, isn't it? It's easy because it's the mechanism, the architecture is all set up to be individualistic and set up your own private company. True. Seems to me there has to be more thought, and each industry is different. Some things it's more kind of public sector, like care perhaps, or water. Some things that are more like a supermarket, I think, lends itself to a cooperative. Or a particular type of cooperative. I think care maybe lends itself to like worker cooperative, or perhaps a community interest company. So I think there's different forms that fit different types of sectors, but surely CICs are a great thing. We need probably more of them, and we need more of all the other types of these plural sets of ownership forms.
I've been meaning to ask you about, are you an optimist, or are you a pessimist, or are you a realist, or how do you see the world? and sort of, going into the future, because I think, like, we keep hearing and seeing news that we're, past the breaking point in terms of climate crisis, and we're all very worried about where we're gonna leave our children. But
I think, it's a good. I think the condition of us all living in this time, was it 2023, in these times, maybe it was always this case in history, but I think it's more pressing at this point for all of us. It's kind of oxymoronic, isn't it? It's like, it's sort of like we kind of are optimistic, but then also deeply pessimistic.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it sort of seems like the age of something really buzzy and exciting happening, but it's also the age of complete abject misery.
Yeah.
So we're kind of all caught between, it's not as easy being optimistic or pessimistic or pragmatist. It's kind of like, I would say most people that I know are kind of a mix of them all, depending on the time, the moment you catch them in. Um, I think we need to be up for the fight, and that's the optimism. I think complacency is a bad thing.
Mm.
I think a restlessness is a good thing. I think to commune, to collaborate, to link with others is a really positive thing, and I think that is a very optimistic thing to do. But the bigger arc here is that it's going to get worse, a lot worse before it gets better. And you know, I think what the optimism I get is that the mask will be revealed. It's getting revealed too slowly, but gradually we'll see, the wealthy are not dying because of floods as much as the poor. Yeah. Oh, how is that person managing to insulate themselves from the horrors?
Mm-hmm.
Why are the poor dying in millions because of floods? The mask will slip, and I think the people will increasingly see that, and ultimately human beings are, social beings, good beings, and I think they'll start to revolt and start to fight back. Without going on, I mean, the one thing I think is important that I get solace and optimism from is that what can you do as an individual with a few people in a place? I think what you can do is to set up those progressive ideas, those progressive entities, those progressive activity, which foreshadow the bigger change. They're almost like things that, like a CIC, a film CIC, beautiful thing. It has to be the way we go about things, where the industry is owned not just by a few big shareholders, it's owned by many, and it's rooted in a community. That is a beautiful seed. And one day it will grow, and you need to be ready to grow it because it's right. So that's the optimism. We need to experiment like mad in those virtuous things. And then they will maybe be ready when the mask slips and we're all ready to say, right, this is how we run the economy. We run it this way, not that way.
Yeah. Do you see those tipping points? Like, is there a logic to those tipping points? Is there like a rational, or does it depend on all sorts of circumstances? When do you get people ready for that revolution, or for that tipping point? Do you know what I mean? Like so you plant the seeds, but then I get people just catch on at some point, like when enough, I often come back to that sort of metaphor of when you boil a pan of water, and when enough bubbles are up, then the whole pan is bubbling. And when enough people are sort of up for it, then it becomes a movement.
There's two things going on here. I think in the arc of where we are, we're not at a tipping point of a new economy being built, an economy like Economist that's built in the image of us. We're not at that tipping point yet. But we need to start to be ready for the types of ideas which were ready when the tipping point of collapse happens more, or because when they revealed how bad it all is, and how really bad it is, and how really awful it all is. And I think we need to be ready with those sorts of things. So there's two things going on. There's one, we need to be ready with these experiments, these ideas that are right and truly right. And on the other hand, there's an inexorable decline and a revealing of how awful things are, and people will move to those alternatives. And you can see it. I mean, nobody was talking about well-being economy 5 years ago. Nobody was talking about community wealth building. Nobody was talking about the power of co-ops. Nobody was talking about, renationalisation of railways, nationalising care. Nobody was talking about curbs to, restrictions on international finance and stuff. That's talking about that. And we talk about price controls. So people are starting to talk more about some of these more progressive economic ideas. But we've not got a tipping point for them to be done on a whole scale basis. And I think we need to be ready with these ideas that are much more virtuous to be ready to be taken up. So and it could be tomorrow. It could be quite quick. COVID was a moment. COVID was a moment where, awful moment, but you could there was people saying, build back better. We're going to build a new society, a new type of economy once COVID is finished. We didn't. We're back to the old economy again. But nevertheless, there was a moment there. It seemed it could have been a tipping point, but it didn't quite manifest itself. So maybe the next international, national, global crisis, which will surely come, maybe that time there will be a true building back better and a true reshaping of how we think about things.
Yeah, you're right. Like COVID was a big moment where we went right back to the core economy. Like that was almost the only economy where it was like, kindness and neighborliness and looking after each other. And yeah. Well, thank you so much, Neil.
Thank you. I hope that was useful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel like we never really have, I've never had that conversation with anyone in the film industry. So I'm very excited to see what seeds have been planted.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.